and both of them panicked, thinking, oh my God, it's going to be one of ours. We need to do something. The larger network, the joke, representatives, got in touch with him and said, we don't think you should go riding around today. He says, oh no, I've got this lead, I'm going to up my motorcycle, I'm going to get out of here. Now, why don't you come across the road to Prince Alfred and we'll have a drink? And they went over there and a few of them stood there, told him about the joke, and he started getting paid that day. So he basically forced his way into the joke. He then built a reputation as being anally retentive. He said, I was really good at remembering numbers, remembering names, running the books, making sure everything worked. He was a great organiser. So they had a position in this network. If we just go to the next slide. This was the network when he arrived. It was being run by Johnson. Now all the names up here that you'll see on each of the slides are all on the public record. And they're all mentioned in the Courier Mail. And I have been through ethics approval here as well. So whilst I'm naming people, I'm not the first person to do so. It all happened 25 years ago. And most of the people are dead, by the way.
And we can't read them anymore.
And you can't read them on the slides. Jack Herbert's down here. He was a line officer. Johnson was in the middle. He was the collector. He was actually called the organiser. That was the name they had for it. The people in blue along the top and here are all the SP bookmakers who were paying. How the system worked was this. Certain police officers knew bookmakers who paid. They collected money. Money was pooled with the organiser and then distributed out. If you were a collector, what you did, you passed over the money less your cut. Then the other police who were in on the joke received a cut from the pooled money. Now, there's a problem in this system. This person, this person, this person didn't know that person. Only this police officer had connections to these SP bookmakers. They could have been lying. They could have been telling the bookmakers, you're going to pay $1,000 a week, and then telling them they were paying $500 a week. They could have been keeping the money. This is part of that secret knowledge that you can get being in a network. So these people could have been ripping off the rest of the network. Now the way it worked is a certain number of police had certain connections through people they had met, and Johnson himself had 5. Okay? And then the money was spread around. Just go to the next one. Jack Herbert was made the new organiser when Johnson left the licensing branch because he was so good at it. This is his reputation, like Howard Marks. He was so good, everyone said, we need you to be in charge. When he got in charge, he started absorbing the bookmakers from other people. As they left the branch, he kept them. So rather than passing them to another person to collect, Jack Herbert said, I'll take care of that. And you'll see he massively expands the number of bookmakers involved, so he gets new bookmakers in and he takes over other people's. He is in fact becoming the key broker. So there's only a handful left of other police who only have a very small number of bookmakers compared to the previous network. And this happens over a period of only about 5 years, he does this. So he's collecting a huge amount of money and he starts distributing it. And he's distributing it to key people, including members of the Rat Pack. The Rat Pack were Tony Murphy, Terry Lewis and Glenn Hallahan. And the Rat Pack have a reputation of being the people who were paying Bischoff, who was the police commissioner from the late 50s and early 60s. Now, Bischoff obviously was never charged with anything. There were certain claims made in the Sunday Mail in 1981 about what was going on. The claims were that he was collecting from various bookmakers around the traps and receiving basically a cut off the Johnson network and other networks. He then retired, had some psychological problems and died, I think, in 1979. That's the article in 81. Some of the claims they made about Bischoff was that his deals with the bookmakers were that he would place bets and he would never lose. The bookmakers would actually record Mr. B and never fill in the rest of the name. And if the horse wins, they would fill in Bischoff. And if the horse lost, they would fill in Baystone. And the particular politician who was giving the interview said that he went and checked the books in Treasury because all the bookmakers had to report. These were legal bookmakers, not SP bookmakers we're talking about. The bookmakers had to report and provide their books. And the clerks went through the books and found that Mr. Bischoff never lost and Mr. Baystone never won. That's the story, man. I would love access to the records to check that story out. So the Rat Pack of Murphy, Hallahan and Lewis were the bad men reportedly for Bischoff. And they were brought into the system. Murphy was actually transferred into the licensing branch and started getting paid straight away. And here's an interesting point. How did they know they could pay Murphy? They knew because Murphy had a reputation as someone who could be paid, who was on the take. So people used reputations to bring new people in. If someone arrived in the branch and they had a reputation from other branches of the police that this is someone who was on the tape, they knew they could start paying them and bring them in. It was good to have a network because they were better protected. If you came in and no one knew you, or no one had any inkling as to whether you could be trusted, they had a test. They would go along to court whenever an SP bookmaker had been charged. What they kept after charging an SP bookmaker was their betting books. That was the proof that they'd been operating. These books were going to be kept by the police, not given back to the bookmaker. All operations happened on Saturday, race day. Then on Monday, they would go to court. The bookmakers, having had their books taken during the day, didn't know what their bets were from Saturday. They needed to get the records of their bets. So what the licensing branch joke members would do is they would go to court, they would leave the court with the books, and they would meet the bookmakers at Lennon's bar, the Lennon's Hotel, at the front bar. And whilst they were holding a conversation with the bookmaker, they would leave the books open on the Saturday race day, and the bookmaker would write down all their bets that had been made, and then they would leaving the books with the police, but they would pay for the drinks. They would pay for, this is in like the 1960s, and they would leave a $50 note for drinks for 3 people, and just walk away and let the police keep the change. That was their payment. So they haven't given them a bribe, they've just paid for the drinks and left and forgotten their change. That was the deal. To test new officers, they would bring them along to the Monday morning meeting, or Monday lunchtime meeting with the bookmakers, and then they would collect the change and offer some of the change to the new officer. If they took the money, they were in the joke. If they didn't take the money, they were never spoken to about the joke at all. Okay, the way that the joke used to work and how they used to find out about raids, their point was they had warned SP bookmakers about raids. They always made sure that the carbon paper in the sergeant's typewriter was fresh. And the sergeant would type up the warrants, throw the carbon paper in the bin. They would come along, pull the carbon paper out of the bin, hold it up to the mirror, make notes, and then ring the various people they had to ring to tell them there was a raid on the way. So Jack Herbert had this system operating until pretty much 1974. And you can see that he even built networks through bookmakers to other bookmakers. And there were other police around being paid. There's one in Cairns, and you'll see others in the other networks. So there was corruption across Queensland, not just in the licensing branch. Fitzgerald only covered the licensing branch. What happened to this particular network is that through, if you like, mismanagement of politics on the part of the systems of corruption in Queensland, they got an honest police commissioner who appointed an honest police minister who appointed an honest police commissioner, Whitrod, who slowly changed what was going on in the police service. It took him about 3 years. But eventually, this system had to be closed down. They just could not operate it anymore. Bauer had taken over from Bischoff as police commissioner. Bauer was in on the joke. He was getting paid. So they were being protected. Then, when they get Whitrod, they're not getting protection from the top. He's aware that something's going on. He transfers Lewis and Murphy out west eventually, so they're separated from the system. And he slowly tightens the noose, if you like, around them. They no longer have these layers of protection they used to have. If you're in a system like this, you're going to protect the bookmakers. And someone in the system has to protect you from the system itself. So in today's system, if you're a corrupt cop, you need to protect yourself from Ethical Standards Command and the CMC, as well as protection from senior officers being able, who are your supervisors. So you have multiple levels of protection. Back then there were no other alternatives you had to go through, especially if you had the police commissioner in your pocket, because the police commissioner decided what would be happening. Anyway, Jack has to retire. He leaves sick from the police. He's outside. He's now out of the network. This was a bit of a mistake. One of the slides I used when I give this presentation about the entire network is I put up Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader. Because there's that scene in Star Wars, the first Star Wars movie, where Obi-Wan's there and he says, if you cut me down, I will become more powerful than you ever imagined. And he doesn't. In fact, he doesn't do another bloody thing for the rest of the Star Wars movies. But that is exactly what happened to Jack Herbert. He did become more powerful. He steps outside the system. There were no intelligence mechanisms, other than the licensing branch, to investigate what he was doing when he was outside the system. When Whitrod leaves, everyone starts talking again, saying, wouldn't it be great if we re-establish the joke? How are we going to do this? Who would we talk to? Well, there's only one man who had a reputation as someone who could run it and knew everybody and was reliable, and that was Jack Herbert. So everyone started approaching him. He's going, no, look, I don't think I want to do it. He'd been in trouble, he'd been charged with corruption, got out of it by rigging evidence, and he was a bit adverse to it. So what he started doing was he started working for each of these two companies, Queensland Automatics and Austral Amusements, who ran the inline gaming machines. Inline gaming machines, if anyone remembers them, they used to be in all the football clubs. They were a game where you won prizes, but unofficially you traded your prizes for cash. I remember them when I was a kid at football clubs everywhere. And the government was in on this as well. License for a pinball machine was $10, the license for an inline gaming machine was $200. So fully aware of what was going on. He started working for these people, they were already paying bribes. They were paying bribes to, where are they? McQuillan was in charge of Queensland Gaming and Justice Department, and Don Lane had been a former police officer, was now a politician, and he was in on the deal with McQuillan. So they were paying money to them. And Jack Herbert was one of the ones who delivered the money occasionally. And he set up new deals. The Cricketers Club Board were paying bribes to make sure that they got a kickback. So what you would do is, every club only had one company to provide all their machines, and everyone fought for those clubs. So they would give a kickback to the club managers to ensure that the one set of machines stayed there forever. And the two key ones that played in the network were Cricketers Club and Kedron Wavell, RSL. Anyhow, Jack's sitting there, he's going, gee, this is a good deal, I'm enjoying this. I wonder if I can make even more money out of this deal. Well, there's someone I know who's become very important who I should bring into it, and that's Terry Lewis. Terry Lewis, through his political machinations, has now been made police commissioner. And he goes to Terry and he says, Terry, did you know that McQuillan and Lane are making money out of the gaming machines? He says, what gaming machines? That's my responsibility under the Gaming Act. I'm the police commissioner. I should be getting a cut of this. And he forced his way into it. And who was the only person who had a connection to Terry Lewis? Jack Herbert. So he starts this all up and running again. He goes, this is great. I really like making money this way. What else can I do? We'll go to the next slide. And he says, I'm going to start the joke again. So, actually, we'll go to the next one first, if we can. He creates an entire network over the next 7 years. Very complex network of gaming, prostitution, and SP bookmakers. He starts bringing the SP bookmakers in slowly, and it eventually grows. So these are all the SP bookmakers here. And he had so much business, he's starting to move into that same place as Gravano. He no longer needs to run it all. He's making a lot of money. And he brings in a former police officer, Mr. White there, who starts collecting money for him. He actually just siphons off a third of the bookmakers to him because he's just too busy. You've got to remember, when he was collecting from that huge network in the late 60s, I calculated it took him, he did all the collections on one day at the end of the month, all on the south side, and it would have taken him 14 hours a day to drive around collecting the money because he collected it from different places. Now it's very interesting, this is part of the network thing. They can only take in bookmakers they could trust as well.